Live. So, a very good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining Stronger Together, a webinar on gender-based violence and suicide prevention. Today we have a very experienced panel, some of them familiar faces, who will be joining with us today to discuss this matter of utmost importance. So, deviating from our standard, we are going to start with a music video. So this is actually Ashanti's newest music video, Rajiniye. So I hope you enjoy the small video we have.
ලයේ පතුලරිදුනත් පැරිලා බියවීනෑ කොහේ කොතැන ඇහුනත් චෝදනා මගේ වාරුවෙන් හරිසීරුවෙන් ආමාවතේ රතුරෝසමල් පාවඩ නැතේ මට පෑගුණේ මිතුරේ රජිනියේ ඔබ නැත තනිවී නිදහසේ ඉගිලියන් දිය නොවී හිංසාවෙන් නෑ මල් පෙති පරවී සුවඳදේ පිපිලා සැරසී දහසක් බාධා කලාය බෝ ඇතේ ජීවිතේ නෑමා සැලිලා ඒ කිසිවක් නිසා තුන් යමේ අසමානවේ ඔබ රූපයෙන් හැඩකාරියේ සුන්දර හිතින් සැරසුණු ලඳුන් බැබලෙයි ලොවේ මිතුරේ රජිනියේ ඔබ නැත තනිවී නිදහසේ ඉගිලියන් දිය නොවී හිංසාවෙන් නෑ මල් පෙති පරවී සුවඳදේ පිපිලා සැරසී කඳුලක් මැටි අත්ලේ ගෙටි හිතරුවේ හිංසා කළා පීඩා කළා කොහෙ හැංගුනේ නැගිටින්න දැන් වීරය රංජය මාවතේ මුදු පාපියන් නුවණින් ගියෝ නෑ පෙරදුනේ රජිනියේ ඔබ නැත තනිවී නිදහසේ ඉගිලියන් දිය නොවී හිංසාවෙන් නෑ මල් පෙති පරවී සුවඳදේ පිපිලා සැරසී
And that was Rajiniye, Ashanti's newest music video. As you can see, it's tackling quite a broad topic and something that is very much needed. So special thanks go to the British Council Sri Lanka's Voices and Choices grant, which funded this music video. So today we are discussing gender-based violence and also suicide prevention with our esteemed panel consisting of Sharanya Sekaram, Adli Mohammed, and of course Ashanti Dialvis. Our moderator today will be Shanuki, who is a familiar face from many of our previous webinars. So Shanuki is a brand purpose consultant, skills development coach, speaker, talk show host, and an advocate. So without further ado, I'll just hand over the controls to Shanuki and we can get this webinar started. Shanuki, sorry, I don't think we can hear you. At least I can't.
I can't either.
No, I think you're muted your mic, have you? Or? No.
Nothing.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Okay, there we go.
Can hear you now.
Okay, great. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry about that, guys. So, going back to everything that I just said, as Parami said, I enjoy speaking, and these are two causes that I am very passionate about. And I'm so happy that we have a panel like this to speak to you about it, because it's not the nicest of subjects to talk about, but it is both subjects are two of the most important subjects that we need to talk about as a society. Just to give you a little bit more of an introduction to the panel today. So we have the creator of the music video that you just watched, Ashanti Dialvis. We all know who she is. She needs no introduction. A singer, a songwriter, a producer. She's a judge on The Voice, and she's been doing amazing things using her art to create movements with her fan base and with the youth of Sri Lanka. And she's also been taking the youth a long way when it comes to recognizing talent. Then we have Sharanya Sekaram, who should not be messed with, and is kind of one of those ladies who's spearheading the way for Sri Lanka, where women should generally not be messed with in the future if Sharanya has her way. So Sharanya is a feminist writer. She's a researcher, an activist. She's a program manager. She works for the Grassrooted Trust, and she's also behind the wonderful informative educational work that happens with Bakamuna, bakamuna.lk. And then we have Adli Mohammed. Adli, I don't know if you've been on Instagram and you've seen her page, Emotional Wellbeing with Adli. Adli is kicking ass in making people feel good about themselves and taking on their problems. She's a counselor, and she's the assistant center manager for Shanti Magam. She's a trainer, a facilitator, and she's a mental health advocate. So thank you, ladies, for being on this panel. Okay, we're going to talk about two subjects today. They are really, really vast subjects. So we're going to try and talk about what is most important for you and I to know. There is a lot more, of course, and after this panel discussion, I would encourage all of you, if you are interested in learning more and getting more involved in activism and advocacy, do read up, do go to the several resources available and find out as much as you can about what's happening in the country around these topics. But let's start off with the music video, the subject of the music video, which was sexual harassment or gender-based violence. And I'm going to start off with the creator of the video, Ashanti. Why did you make this particular video? I mean, music videos in general, to get the popular vote and to get your fan following going and to get the ratings up, it's usually all about fun and love and romance and all that. Why did you choose this particular subject for your music video?
Well, I mean, I've always wanted to champion the causes for girls and women and give them a voice through my music. I've come a long way in the commercial music industry, and then at one point you think, how do you add value to society? So for me, it was a turning point in my career as well, and growing up in music, I suppose, to take a step back and look at the things that affect people and communities. And there were two things that really got my attention. One was gender-based violence. The other one was suicide prevention and depression. So more specific to gender-based violence, I really thought that I should use music as a medium to open a conversation, to create awareness, and then also, the actions for it and provide the solutions too. So I think art is a great medium to do that. And that's why I got on it.
Okay. And was it easy to produce a music video like this? I mean, how did you get the funding to do something like this? Because I have a talk show, but it's not easy to get anyone to sponsor or fund a talk show that talks about controversial issues. And this is certainly a controversial issue.
Of course.
So who helped you create this?
British Council came on board for both music videos, actually. Their Voices and Choices grant was something I had to bid for. So I had to prove that these were two subjects that really affected our youth and our girls and women, and something that I wanted to champion. So I had to bid for this, and then basically they selected it as one of the causes they want to support, and they put the funds behind the two projects. So I think even the reason we're having this conversation is because we have the two music videos, and people can now have more awareness through the music videos on a grassrooted or a mass market scale as well.
Yeah, I think it's an important point to note, because a lot of activists, advocates, artists, we have a voice, and people are trying to sort of speak about this, but of course without that kind of funding or without the endorsement of the corporates or the private sector, that it's the voice is smaller. And obviously support like this can go a long way in reaching more people. But just to talk specifically,
one more thing, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
When I first put the music video for Hitadanne Mituranne out, I called the TV stations, the mainstream media, and they were like, suicide prevention, depression, no, I don't think we can promote anything like that on TV, on mainstream media. So I thought, you know what, we don't need the support of mainstream media because we have YouTube. And with the gender-based violence song, I didn't even go to mainstream media. I think we've come to a point where we can promote our own music. I'm promoting the song by myself through TuneCo across all the digital platforms, promoting across YouTube and all social media channels, which is why we're having this conversation on a social media channel as well, platform as well. Even though there is, I think, more things that could have been done if the pandemic wasn't happening, because we were supposed to take it to all schools across the island and, just create awareness about these two subjects with kids. But I think for some reason, we now have a bigger platform.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think it's doing its work, and I think there's a reason for everything. Sharanya, I'm just going to move the conversation to you, because the music video we watched, Rajini, kind of highlighted certain forms of gender-based violence. So you had the sexual harassment in the workplace. I think a lot of women in Sri Lanka, if they watch those music videos, it's nothing new, right? This is something that they have experienced in their lifetime at some point or the other. There was a lot of harassment-based sort of harassment, sexual harassment on public transport was featured in that video. And I think that's something that we still as a society, except for this, handful of people who are working in the field itself, there's a large ignorance around this subject of gender-based violence, because it's a huge, huge subject, right? And it's got like that's a broad definition, isn't it? And gender-based violence really has different forms, doesn't it? Like, what is it that we need to know? What is gender-based violence? And what are the forms of gender-based violence out there that are predominant in Sri Lanka?
Sure. Thanks, Shaniki. Before I go into that, I just also want to commend Ashanti for what was a really beautiful production. Working in this space, I think we see these subjects aren't often handled with the sensitivity and with the dignity of the people who are going through this, right? It's often sensationalized. You see clothes ripping. You see this very sort of like clickbaity type creations. And just, I really want to commend you just for what a beautiful, sensitive, dignified portrayal, but that didn't compromise how painful and how just torturous this kind of harassment is. So just really, I mean, I was really blown away with how phenomenal, what a phenomenal piece of work that is. I just wanted to say that while it's at the top of my head. Shanti, to answer your question, gender-based violence is essentially a large term which was developed around the late 80s, early 90s by feminist activists to understand violence that is linked to gender inequality. So often gender-based violence is said to be violence that happens due to gender, which is actually a slight incorrection. It's not really the correct definition of the term, right? Because what the term gender-based violence tries to do is distinguish from other forms of violence, like war, normal homicide or murder, normal, or like, fits of rage, a fight that might happen in a bar. It seeks to make a distinction between those forms of everyday violence and violence that is specifically linked to gender inequality in society. So it is a violence that has its roots in how we view men and women, how women and men have been socialized to think about themselves, to think about their relationships with each other, to think about their roles and their place within society. And the violence that results directly from those who violate that, or because of the power dynamics that result from this kind of divisions in society. So for example, violence against women or sexual harassment in public transport has its links to the idea that women shouldn't occupy public space. That by occupying public space, by being in the public, by being alone, by traveling, by engaging in the public domain, which is seen to be the male's domain, they are inviting violence in, it is all right, or that they are asking for it. Similarly, you see another form of gender-based violence which you brought up, which is workplace sexual harassment, is again this idea that women's role in the formal workplace is limited, right? I think we can no longer say that we still think the women's role is in the home. I think it's evolved slightly to the point where we think women should be in the workplace, but in certain capacities. She should be the receptionist and the pretty secretary. She needs to take on emotional labor. If when we do workplace sexual harassment seminars and the work I've done in that, it's really interesting to hear from the women where they say they're always expected to be the ones with the stapler and the pen and the Panadol to help. They're the ones who are expected to de-escalate conflicts in office. So you hear this narrative, right? Put a woman on the team because she'll manage things better. It's good to have a woman on the team. She's often expected to be the one to sort of collect the money for a card or the wreath of flowers for somebody whose relative has passed away. This emotional labor, right? So, and then when women are violating that idea of who they should be, even within the workplace, they're inviting the harassment. And by being in the workplace, their role is to be pretty, to provide that attractiveness, to soften things. You often see corporates will have a lovely picture and they'll put, 3 of their best looking women to show that we're soft and we're gentle and we're lovely. And so that's where really what gender-based violence is. It's violence that is linked to gender inequality in society. And until we solve gender inequality and until we quite literally dismantle the patriarchy, that violence will continue to persevere. Unlike war or homicide or bar fights or regular brawls, which you can solve by, other means, gender-based violence is rooted in gender inequality.
Okay. And if I were to sort of just ask you, you did mention the patriarchy. Why does the patriarchy even exist? Who started this? And why do a lot of women in Sri Lanka themselves kind of perpetuate it? If you look at, a lot of these, for instance, even the ones who think that all they are worth is that pretty secretary or that emotional labor, or that they should be, covering themselves up on the bus and all that. What is the root cause for this patriarchy and, what's going on with society?
Patriarchy actually comes from the idea of a patrilineary society, right? So patrilineary society is where money, power, and lineage is in the hands of males. So males would own property, and this. So it's interesting to note that not all societies were patrilineary, and we have, because of colonization, our societies are also now that, because we follow patrilineary societies. So it's where when certain Western societies stopped being nomadic, and they started settling and they owned land became power, money became power. So who owns the land? Who has the lineage to the land, right? And then because back in those days you didn't have DNA tests, you had it as the males because it was easier to tell where their lineage lay. So you can't separate power and money from patriarchy, right? And then patriarchy, so then therefore men had control over money, they had control over public office, because they quite literally owned the land. And then that continues to build over thousands of years a system that positions one sex over the other in a particular kind of way. Now, the problem there is, even though other things in society have evolved, the structures and the systems that we have created with this in mind has not evolved, right? So if you take, for example, women voting, it only really started happening 100 years ago. Right. So prior to that, the older democracies, the laws, the structures, the systems were created by one sex, maybe not necessarily always with the intention to oppress or dominate the other sex, but with themselves as the center, because that was a reality, right? So this is why a patriarchy, there is no point replacing it with a matriarchy and saying we've solved the problem, because that's simply replacing one power system with another. It's about dismantling those power systems and questioning why power systems exist. So the reason many women buy into or subscribe into the patriarchy is because we're all raised by the same society, right? And nothing keeps a system of inequality and power going greater than those who are oppressed by it believing that that's the right system. That's the greatest success of the patriarchy, right? It turns its foot soldiers are those who are most oppressed by it. Because the minute those who are most oppressed by it are like, hold on, this is not working, what do you have? History has shown us you have a revolution. It's what happened in the French Revolution. It's what happened in Russia. It's what happened with independence struggles. Once you start thinking and looking at it as a system of power and you compare it historically, that's what's happened. And that's what's happening slowly and has been happening at different points in history, is revolution brews. Women are like, hold on, what do you mean I can't vote? What do you mean I can't own my own land? Revolution brews, change happens. And now we're very much in the phase of I don't know whether you phrase it as the Me Too revolution, but you are in the revolution of sexual liberation, of women occupying public space, women's bodies, women's right to exist in the forms that they want to exist in. And that challenges the very notions of how gender-based violence takes place. So to answer why women subscribe to the patriarchy is because women are raised by the patriarchy. Right.
It's all we know.
Subscribe to it. It's all you know. And you are raised to believe that. And also remember, the patriarchy rewards you for being a good woman. You are rewarded. So it gives you limited rewards. You then become the ideal mother. You become the ideal wife. You're the cool girl. You're not like other girls. These are all rewards the patriarchy little by little gives you, just enough to make you believe that if you subscribe to the system, you really will be happier than those unmarried, miserable feminists at 40 who all they want is to have sex and have a man to love them. But they can't. That's what we've been told, right?
Yeah.
We're told
unmarried, miserable feminists over here.
But like that's constantly what you're being told by the patriarchy. Yeah. So that fear sets in also. So that's why women subscribe to it, because it's a system and it's a very, very clever system.
Ajay, I'm just going to put this question on to you now, because Sharan is, okay, we talked about how women itself, they're conditioned into becoming a part of this system and all that. But then we also have then victims of that system, the women themselves, right? And things like gender-based violence, like these occasions of sexual harassment, either in the workplace or on public transport, or even in the home or on the street or wherever it is, creates victims. I don't want to call them survivors at that point, because they are being victimized, right? Yeah. And this has a huge effect on people's mental health. We as a society, this culture that we have created, and I say we because although patriarchy talks about men, we are all part of this society and we are all part of this patriarchy. We are inflicting harm, right, on someone. So what is it actually that women go through? What happens to their mental health when they go through this stuff?
Okay. Well, as Sharani was saying, like we also maintain it, right? So when somebody, let's say they're a victim of gender-based violence, there's already so much of stigma surrounding it. And with that comes the shame that's associated. I mean, it's a victim who has gone through all this, but then what we call victim blaming, right? For example, like Sharana said, asking for it. So now you have to understand already, if it was me, I'm already feeling broken with what has happened. Let's say it was intimate partner violence or something like that. I'm already going through, how to say, the effects of going through gender-based violence. And then I have to deal with the fact that there's stigma associated with it, right? And even if I need to go out for help, then there's come the shame and the guilt that you're made to feel as to, well, that happens. You should be okay with it. And this is a suppression. And for that, it affects somebody's mental health to an extent where if they don't get the proper support, let's say from family or friends with what they're going through, it can also lead them to feeling suicidal. Because apart from being a victim, when they don't have support, right? And then they have no way to deal with this, then suicide also becomes an option. Families also, they have a huge part to play. I know, like we say, it's easy to talk about it saying, yes, this is what we should do. But when somebody actually goes through it, how supportive are women actually? Because the victim blaming doesn't just happen from men, victim blaming happens from women. And then they're made to feel worse. And if you take people from, let's say, the marginalized community, if you take people from the LGBTIQ community, right, they are already stigmatized with being a part of that community. And then when they have been a victim of gender-based violence, they are at a high risk of suicide because they're already going through so much, and this is like an added layer. Where do we go to? Whom do we reach out to? So it also can lead people to go into depression. So suicide and depression are what happens when somebody goes, I mean, not all the time, but those are possibilities of happening depending on how that situation is handled by people around it.
Thank you. And so that kind of gives me a good opening to go into our second music video, which is Hitadanne Mituranne, and which talks about suicide and depression, and another segment of community that is susceptible to it, which is the youth. So Parami, if you're there, can we play that music video, please?
පළවෙනි පාරින් මෙඩිකල් කොලෙජ් එකට තේරෙන්න තමයි බලාපොරොත්තු තිබුණේ. ඉන්ටර්නෙට් එකේ ඒ ස්ක්‍රීන් එක දිහා මම සෑහෙන වෙලාවක් බලාගෙනත් හිටියා. ඇත්තටම මට හිතා ගන්නවත් බැරි වුණා. උසස් පෙළ විභාගය අතිශයින්ම තරඟකාරී විභාගයක්. තමන්ගේ කැපවීම තමයි හැමතිස්සෙම වටින්නේ. දෙන්නට බෑ කිසිදා බෑ නුඹ මට විතරක් තුන් හැම හුස්මක් මිය යන්නේ අමතක නෑ මාදෙනෙති.
මට කාලයක් මේ හොඳටම ඇති ණය ගැති මේ ජීවිත කරුමැති කරු නැති සෙමෙන් විසිරුණු සිතුවිලි තැනු ඇති ධෛර්යගෙන සේ කුඹලගේ ගෙට මැටි බලන මුනේ ඇති විසි කරන්න ඔය මුනිසා කිනිසා කඳුළු සයුරක් න කරගන්න මිරිස්සා කිමිදී බලන් දියඹක හරසර මතු පිට වාරකම දියඹට පරසර ජීවිත රැකගෙන ප්‍රශ්න වලට සොහොනක් තනන නම් බොන දෙන වාලොවේ කොහොමද තනිමුම් කලුවර කාමරයක බැරියම කාඩවම නංගි මලි නැසේ අපි යාළුවෝ එකතේ මේසේ කඳුලක රස කැසේ අපිමයි හඳුනන්නේ නැවි නැවි නැගිටින්නේ අපිමයි ජයගන්නේ කඳුලක රස කැසේ අපිමයි හඳුනන්නේ නැවි නැවි නැගිටින්නේ අපිමයි ජයගන්නේ කඳුලක රස කැසේ අපිමයි හඳුනන්නේ නැවි නැවි නැගිටින්නේ අපිමයි ජයගන්නේ කඳුලක රස කැසේ අපිමයි හඳුනන්නේ Nabi 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 pinne, api mai jaya ganne.
Okay. Yep, so that was the second music video that we watched, which covers the subject of depression, suicide prevention, stuff that the youth go through, mental health stuff. Ashanti, why is there a personal reason that you have chosen these two subjects in particular, gender-based violence and suicide prevention? Do you have any sort of...
Well, it was first suicide prevention because I Googled the stats for suicide in Sri Lanka and I was so surprised that I had been completely unaware of this and how much our youth and I mean even like, you know, everyone goes through. And when I found out what the stats were like, reading a WHO report, I don't know if that's extremely accurate. There is a little bit of controversy here and there with that I've heard. But in general, the thing that really struck me was that amongst being one of the highest rates in the world or in Asia, that attempted suicide amongst women was the highest. So that really, really got to me. And that's when I thought I would, you know, channel in British Council for funding for such a project. And it sort of went hand in hand really well together because they were trying to champion the cause for women and girls. I wanted to be the voice for it. So it was a great synergy and we were able to do this with absolutely no interference creatively. So I scripted this music video after having a chat with so many psychologists about the do's and don'ts. I talked to them and got some insight. I think Adle was also there the first time I came into Shanti Margam. I was like vigorously writing notes down on how to do this because I'd never done a music video on such a serious topic before. And I just wanted to be socially conscious about how I produced it. Like Sharanya said, there are a lot of music videos out there that have so much of insensitivity to the subjects. And if you're to do justice and actually look for solutions and give hope to people, then it has to be done in a proper way. So I went through the whole process with psychologists, created the scripts based on the most important things that needed to be highlighted. And I was told that the things when it comes to teenagers and the problems they face with depression and suicide was parental pressure, exam pressure, peer pressure, and also coping with breakups. So those are the things that I've highlighted in this music video. I know, Shaniki, you asked me if there is a personal reason, but it's not really personal. It's just that the information that I saw really got to me so much that I thought I need to do something about this.
Then it becomes personal.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And what do you hope the music videos will do? So you've done the music video. is there any hope that this will go beyond just being a trending subject that people will look at and say, okay, and be aware of what you hope to do with these music videos?
See, it's more difficult to push non-commercial music into the public eye or ear, so to speak. When it comes to these kind of subjects, you will get I don't know, over millions of views on commercial music, but when it comes to these, it will be in the 100,000s or 200,000s, because of the fact that sometimes people in Sri Lanka just don't want to accept things that they cannot speak about. They want to turn a blind eye because they feel like living in bliss. Ignorance is bliss, they say, right? So I feel like if they just turn a blind eye to it, they don't really have to deal with it. But I'm putting it out there. You have to deal with it because you're seeing it. It's right in front of you. You can see the things that are happening. It's probably happening to you or someone you know. And we should be aware of these things that are happening in society. I mean, Sri Lanka as a culture is so closed. I think we need to open up. We are not the generation of our parents. We can speak out. There's so much change because I've been working closely with Gen Z. And they think so differently. Even to how we think. I think we are the layer before them. So it's really surprising how they think and how they're so open to this kind of change. And I've had so many 13, 14-year-olds message me about Rajini and say, I love the work that you're doing and that you're championing this cause for us because it's something that really needs to be highlighted and seen. And just the level of, I would say, the growth and the mentality in these small kids that you can see is amazing, because this is what we need to change a culture.
Okay, so then I'm going to pose this next question to both Aadle and Sharanya. You can decide who goes first. But this thing about society being largely blind and ignorant to what's right in front of our faces, sometimes it's because we are not taught, or we're conditioned to be blind to it, because it's become such a normalcy when it comes to either noticing depression or noticing that somebody might be contemplating suicide, noticing signs of gender-based violence, duress or stress in someone's life. We don't know what to look for. We don't know how to identify it. We don't have a language for it. So could you both take turns in sort of running us through what are the signs? What are the signs that we should be sensitized to watch out for, to know that there could be something going on that we can intervene with? And you're both mute.
I feel Aadle should go first on this one because she is the expert on that.
Thank you. First of all, I mean, even when I watched this video, when you launched it last time, I was so happy with the video because I know you spoke to us about, and you made sure that, methodology and those things are not portrayed, and it's a video that will connect with people regardless of age. That will be helpful. And the 3 instances, I think a lot of youth also will connect to that. The instances that you have used, one is, there's so much of parental pressure to achieve, to pass exams, right? And young children and youth these days are not taught coping mechanisms. They don't know how to cope. They're only told to, okay, this is what you need to achieve, and there is no what if you don't. And bullying also takes place a lot, whether it's in schools, whether it's cyberbullying. So touching on those were really important. And I know I sent it to a lot of my interns at that time also, and they were sharing it like mad. They didn't know about it, and they were sharing it and saying what a wonderful video it was and how it connects to them. So hats off to you for Rajini and this, because I don't know of anybody else who has done videos like this here, talking about these kind of topics, because suicide or gender-based violence, they're both topics that people really don't want to approach because the stigma that surrounds it. Mental health alone has stigma. So these two, there is stigma around it. As for the signs, I know it's when we know that somebody is feeling suicidal, everybody tries to either dismiss or avoid, because the fear of it's that huge responsibility that comes in when you know that somebody is suicidal, right? And you don't know what to do. So, and some people, I know we had, it was a listening booth we had for Suicide Prevention Day from Shanti Margam last Saturday. And some of the people, they came and shared stories, and they were like, they looked at the warning signs, and there was one person who lost a family member and said, I wish I knew this, because the person that I lost showed these. So a little bit of awareness goes a long way. So I'm just going to go on to the signs so that then Sharana can take over after that. Well, if you notice changes in their sleep or appetite, if there are fluctuations in moods, they'll be quite agitated or anxious, loss of interest in daily routines or pleasurable activities. So if you know somebody who has a routine that either they meet friends or they go for a jog in the morning and they have these routines and they actually enjoy it, you would see them lose interest and stop doing that. So that's something to pay attention to. Misuse of alcohol and other substances, because that becomes an unhealthy coping mechanism when they're going through something. So that's something to look out for. Extreme signs of hopelessness and despair. So this actually comes out mostly when people are having a conversation. It would be like, what's the point? It doesn't matter anyway. So when they talk to you also, there'll be this whole hopelessness that's in their tone of voice. They'll isolate themselves, withdraw. Also, there is something called a blunt effect. So basically, if you're hanging out with people that you know, and usually a person would react, right? Either they would laugh or they would comment, and they would have this complete no emotions on their face because they're so caught up with whatever that they're going through. So that's what we call a blunt effect. They might talk about death also, and they start giving away possessions. It could be things that, like paying attention if you know a friend who likes collecting stuff or buying stuff, and all of a sudden they don't care much for that. That's something, you know, to look out for. And last but not least is the sudden positive mood that things are better. This is important because people, if you have noticed, if they have been feeling really low for some time, and if they have some of these symptoms for some time, overnight they would be like, okay, I'm okay, let's go out, let's party, let's meet. That can be a very dangerous sign also, because most probably then they would have decided as to when they're going to do it and how they're going to do it. So because they have that date planned and set, they feel that, you know, now I have nothing to worry about, so let me just enjoy the rest of the days that I have. People tend to miss that a lot because we always want people to be okay so that we don't have to deal with that, right? So if they've been feeling low and in a slump and all of a sudden they are okay, it's easy. Let's back off now. That person is okay. So that is something we miss a lot. And these are some of the signs that we can pay attention to with people we know, love, care about, even colleagues. Sharon, if you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thank you, Adli. I think that was super comprehensive and super clear. Just one thing I want to add is something we've noticed is that people have this tendency to not also look introspectively at their own behavior and how they portray themselves as whether somebody you can come to. So I've often had friends and people I know who, you know, we've heard someone is going through something, whether it's mental health struggle or whether they faced harassment or violence. They say, oh, I can't believe she didn't talk to me about it. And you know, you have this moment where like, but you make sexist jokes all the time, or you openly talk about how you think women lie when they bring these issues up, or, you know, your general behavior and demeanor is something people are watching all the time and deciding whether that they're going to be, whether you're the person they can come to or not. And just because you are in their life doesn't mean you have created a kind of openness, because it's a good thing to think about, you know, when somebody asks you, oh, so-and-so went through this, what do you think? Your response is a good gauge for them to know how you will respond if they ever have to come with you to an issue. If you gossip, for example, with someone, they know that if they tell you something in confidence, there's a good chance you'll talk about it with other people. If you're judgmental openly, especially if you're judgmental behind people's backs. So it's not enough to just post a Facebook status and say, I'll always be here for you. You can always come to me. And sort of tweet and Instagram it and kind of like performatively say those things. And especially for young kids and for teenagers, they are watching and listening to us all the time. I know so many teenagers whose parents say, I can't believe she didn't come to me. But then when we dig a little deeper, you ask teenagers, they'll say, oh, my mom judged this girl who said, who was talking about similar, she was talking about somebody else in that same way. And you have to remember that people are watching you very often. And it's all the things you do. So it's not just about the big things just because, you have this big moment where you announce to all your friends that I'm always here for you. It's about your everyday behavior and whether you create that idea in your actions and in the way you conduct yourself as someone who is trustworthy, who is supportive, not judgmental, and somebody who you can actually come and talk to. Because I think a lot of us perform it and say it and tweet it and Instagram it, but whether we actually behave like those people in our everyday lives, it's about the little steps, not always about the big bangs that you throw out.
Thank you. And Ashanti, I know you talked about how you want your music to make an impact and to kind of be this voice for social causes and this voice for change. And certainly you've told us like how music can be an effective medium. And this is a little bit of a different question from what we prepared. But I think it's important when you look at the music industry, not just locally, internationally, right? You have the musicians who are speaking for a cause using their art, and you have a large base of musicians who are just trending all the toxicity, right? And, they create their popularity through that. And sometimes it's a case of, as a society who are influenced by these artists and by their creations, sometimes you don't know which side to take because you are influenced by what is trending, right? So how do you think music should change, or how do you think art should be used in Sri Lanka? It doesn't always have to be about a cause. Art doesn't have to be an activism. But what are your thoughts on what the music industry is doing right now when it comes to issues like gender-based violence, when it comes to issues like bullying or like isolation and cornering somebody, or that version of the other who is not cool enough? And this is all stuff that is also created by the music industry, stuff. So what are your thoughts as an artist, as a leading artist and a leading voice in this country? What are your thoughts on that?
I think as a whole, we need to think better, and we need to change our thoughts on what commercial music should be, first of all. Like there are some popular music videos which I don't really see. I look at them and then I think to myself, if they had just changed this thing because of the fact that they may get trending views on it, it may have actually been something very powerful. So little things like that. I think conceptualization is so important, and people don't put enough thought into it. It is the core when it comes to music, because if you don't think about what you're doing or how you're impacting society, you're blindly creating trends for a new generation. I've heard so many people say at live concerts, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, when it comes to influence, we have a huge role to play when it comes to the younger generation, and they follow us. So the way that we should treat that is also by being more socially responsible as artists. So the way we conduct ourselves on social media, like Sharon just mentioned as well, social media is like is just a completely artificial world. And recently, one of my celebrity friends had posted something that really rang a bell with me, saying, just because I post up stories on social media, you don't know my real life. And that's extremely true, because it is just a summary of what you do or what you want your fan base to see, not who you really are. So for me as an artist, I would like to bring that change by showing who I really am, showing what I'm passionate about, showing the things I want to do for change, and opening up that conversation. I hope, and I know that there are some people who are doing the same, and I hope that a lot more other artists follow that route as well. I'm not saying that doesn't need to be commercial music, but if commercial music too can give a positive message, that would be really great.
That would be ideal. Yeah. Adle, so we talked about seeing the signs of depression or seeing the signs of stress, some form of stress, whatever has caused that stress. But often what happens is, I mean, I'm going to talk about infrastructure later with Sharanya, but even in terms of mental health and well-being and offering support, not all of us are trained counselors, not all of us are trained psychologists, and very often when we have friends or family who are going through something or who have been victimized to a circumstance, we are not in a position to have a professional on the spot, right? I mean, it rarely happens that within 5 minutes you have either law enforcement or professional support available. So as ordinary civilians who are largely ignorant about how to deal, as you said, this is like a huge responsibility you feel. What are the things we can do at that point? What is important for us to do as people who are in that place and time? What can we do to actually support and not trigger something or not, create a bigger issue than there already is?
First off, I think Shanaki, as a person who's not a mental health professional, you do a lot. Right?
But that's because people like you trained me. So not everybody has that training, right?
So first off, I need to thank you for doing that, because I know people reach out to you, and I know when they reach out to you, you reach out to me. But still, the fact that they know that they can talk to you, that's what's important. As Sharanya was saying, that being approachable for people to know that you can help them. And as like saving somebody from who is suicidal, it's not just a job of professionals. Any one of us can do it. It's listening to them actively, basically. Giving them that space for them to share what they're going through. When somebody is feeling down, whether it's, whether they're feeling suicidal or if they're feeling depressed, it's that they want to be heard. They want a safe space to share what they're going through. And what they want is for the other person to listen. Don't be judgmental, be empathetic, and be open and listen to them. And don't try to be the fixer there. It's not your responsibility to fix things. What somebody is going through, if you take all of us, examples, of each one of us, when we're going through something, it's really nice to be able to talk to somebody about it and have them just listen, right? It's just that I think because, I don't know, I think it's our culture, our society, our upbringing, we have to tell them what to do. We have to advise them, okay, don't do this. This is what you need to do. And then we dismiss. So dismissing, especially when somebody's going through something, I know people say, it's in your head, you'll get over it. Such a drama king or such a drama queen. So if anybody talks about suicide in any kind of way, say they are contemplating ending their life or they use the word suicide, don't disregard it. And there is not a lot that's expected from you at that time. It's letting that person know that you're there for them and that you're there to listen. Sometimes, if it is in person when you meet somebody, sometimes just sitting by them in silence is helpful. But letting them know you're going through something really difficult. If you don't want to talk about it, it's okay, I'm here. What can I do for you? How can I help? So they know that you're not coming from that judgmental space of trying to fix things or tell them what they need to do. So it's really not that difficult. We just give people some space, be empathetic, be non-judgmental, and have that openness where they can talk to you. And as Sharanya said, that will happen like if they're observed, like even for parents. I know, I think once also I spoke about this. It's like I can tell my kid, oh, you can come to me about anything. And she'll always go back to when she did something, how I reacted. When I did that, she yelled at me, and then they're not going to come to you. So how you deal with people matters. And as I said before, it's not that difficult. Just be there for them, be open, non-judgmental, and let them share what they're going through. Then if they don't want to talk to you, you can always, I know in Ashanti's video also the numbers were shared at the end for Shanti Margam, for CCC Line or Sumitrio. At least you can do is just give them those numbers. Say, okay, if you don't want to talk to me, here are some resources. Call them and talk to them. At least they know that they have options. So basically being there for somebody.
And Sharanya, how about when it comes to gender-based violence? I mean, all of us see it, right? And sometimes I see it myself when I'm walking on the road. You see it on the bus. If it's not happening to you, it'll be calling, happening, you've seen it in public spaces, but we just don't act on it because it's not our business, you know, and we'll go see the way that child is being harassed or something like that. Or we hear domestic violence happening next door, sometimes in our own house. What do we do as citizens? How do we act responsibly? You're mute.
John.
Yeah, sorry, I just realized that. So I think with gender-based violence, a really important thing is to center the victim or the survivor, however they identify, in whatever response, right? So it's not, like Adlai said, it's not always your role to go in and try and rescue them before asking them what they need and what they want. So whether it's a catcalling situation or whether it's in an office, because people take different lengths of times to come to decide what it is they want to do. You might hear, you know, your neighbor going through domestic violence. She may not be ready yet to approach it and to deal with it. So if you go in with a, you must leave him, here's the 10 things you must do kind of approach, she's going to withdraw and she's going to be like, this person is pushing what they want onto me. It might take months, it might take a year, it might take longer. What the best thing to do is to approach the person you think is being harassed. Even if they deny it at the start, even if they say, no, nothing is going on, I'm sure you misheard. No, that's okay. Just say, that's fine, I understand. I'm here for you. If you want to talk about anything, I'm here for you. Whatever you feel you need to do. And it's about building consistent. Because when we started doing this work and when I started doing this work, there were lots of people who didn't approach me at first. And then it was over time, you know, I'd sometimes reach out and I'd say, hey, like I noticed that you seem a little unhappy or that this didn't seem very nice. Are you okay? And they're like, no, I'm fine. What do you mean? Like, there's nothing wrong. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. If you say nothing's wrong, nothing's wrong. But, you know, if you just ever feel uncomfortable or anything, just know that, you know, we can talk about it. But if you say nothing is wrong, nothing is wrong. Then they begin to trust you, right? So it's about building that trust. And I think it's about decentering yourself and centering the person in question, because it's not about you being the hero or you saying, oh, I rescued this person, or making it about you. I think we need to stop making it about ourselves and start making it about the person and what they need. And everybody needs something that everybody. Some of them might stay. They might say in a different way. They might find a way to fight back, escalate. It's about what that person wants, not about what you think is best for them. And I think that is the most fundamental thing we can do as citizens, is reach out and let them know we're there for whatever they need in that moment in time.
Okay, thank you. And what about, okay, so it's not just society that needs to improve in its response, but also state infrastructure, the system. What's going on with the system, and what does the system need to do? What do we as civilians need to push for to make this country more, I guess, easier to work with?
So
when it comes to
I
changing?
would say, for me, I think I see a lot of hysteria and a lot of bashing of the system without really understanding what the system is in the first place. For example, we have made huge strides in working with the police, right? There have been strides that have been made. I think it's really important to not turn those who have to work and uphold the system against those of us who are advocating and make them the enemy. So I think what needs to improve is to find ways and means to train and support those who are working and uphold the system. So law enforcement, legal aid supporters, underfunded institutions like Shanti Margam, like Women in Need. It really frustrates me when I hear people say we must do something. And my thing is, why don't you stop kind of posturing and give money to the organizations that do this work every day, day in, day out? I think that's really important, because it's not about doing big national campaigns always. It's about the kind of work that Ashanti is doing with the music, something that will endure and last and can be played over and over again. It's about the kind of work Adlai does within Shanti Margam, is an institution that exists and will do this work every day. It's about supporting police training and police commissions, because they are the ones who are generally the first responders. It's about training nurses and doctors, because we also attack them without understanding that, again, they're coming from the same society as the perpetrator is. right? They are raised in the exact same environment. So before we have given them the tools to understand, for 40, 45, 50 years of their life, they've believed one thing. They go back to their homes, their societies, their colleges, their batchmates. That same belief system is there. But suddenly when they put on this uniform, we expect them to have a completely different mentality. It's ridiculous. So we need to understand that there's long-term consistent work that needs to be done, and that it is possible to change, right? I mean, during lockdown, how did we even know there was so much domestic violence? It was the head nurse at the general hospital, because she was trained and sensitized to understand that this is really unusual and this is something I need to talk about. So I think the work that needs to be done with the system we need to look at who the first responders are and how do we support them and not make enemies from them and constantly bash the state and bash the system and say, these people are useless, nothing will change, and, get all worked up. And understand that a lot, especially the women in those systems, are working against a very difficult patriarchal field. And they're doing what they can do best, and support them. I think more support.
Yeah, thank you. Ashanti, I want to know from you, as an artist, okay, when these young people reach out to you, when you've reached them with whatever message you've got in your song, what more can you do to help kind of connect them with services and things like that? Do you think the music industry should be connected to various support systems around when you do work like this?
Most definitely. You're saying, have people reached out to me and asked for support systems that they should be? Yeah, which is why I actually highlighted all of the suicide prevention and depression hotlines on the suicide prevention music video, to give everyone a channel to speak about their problems. And we also did another campaign with Mobitel, where Mobitel came on board, and we did a campaign for to open the conversation of suicide prevention and depression post Hitha Danne Mituranne. And then also we had conversations with counseling psychologists talking about the subject and the things that should be addressed and looking for signs. And then also a solution, how to find a solution for the problem. So I think that's really important, and I was really glad to be able to do that with that music video. With this music video, it was a little bit different, Rajini, because it's some, and then you're looking at the action, and then the solution is right in front of you. I mean, you can think it for yourself. Like, what have I been doing? Or this could be my sister, my mother, myself, my friend. How would I react? And to be a more responsible citizen and stop ignoring the things in front of you as well. So we haven't really put a call to action on hotlines on this song, but I must say that the funds from both songs are going to well, I do know that for Hitha Danne Mituranne, all of the proceeds have gone into suicide prevention hotlines to provide funds for new infrastructure. So something similar will happen with Rajini as well. And it's going to be something ongoing, because I don't want it to be just a conversation that starts and ends there. It will be something that we will keep going and keep advocating. So if anyone needs to reach out to me, I'm always on my social media, very active on social media when it comes to listening to people, and I constantly read all the comments on the YouTube videos. Some are a little strange. I think people need to change their mindsets, and I leave that conversation open so that other people can answer those questions. And I like to see how they flow as well, because it's very difficult to change a mindset in society. It's going to be something that we have to do little by little, just like Sharani said as well. And at least this is opening up a conversation. People are talking about it. And yeah, so there in itself, I feel like we're sort of emotionally connecting with people, which is the first step.
Yeah. Okay. So final question for all three of you is, what do you want people to know now we talked about what we as citizens should be doing. We talked about perhaps the changes that we need in the infrastructure, but what about the person who is going through it? If there's a person out there who has been affected by these experiences or who might be affected by the experiences in the future, what do you want them to know? Maybe it's someone who has never spoken about it. Maybe it's someone who doesn't know who to speak to about it. Maybe it's someone who wants to deal with it on their own. Sometimes, you need to do that also. From all three of you.
Yeah. Could take this first.
Okay.
Actually, I really hope people do watch the videos, and I do hope they watch this conversation that happens. And what I would like everyone out there to know is that you're not alone. If you can't reach out to, if it would be really good if you can reach out to family or friends to talk about what you're going through, as in talk about it. There's nothing there's nothing insignificant about what you're going through. People always dismiss what they're going through, saying, okay, we need to be strong. I hear this a lot from people. What does that mean? What does, when you say you have to be strong, mean? For you to control everything that's going on, to suppress, that's not strength. Talk about it. Talk to somebody. There are helplines out there like Shanti Margam and like the other lines there, CCC line. There are people, if you don't feel comfortable, you can talk to people you know. You can talk to people you don't know, but talk about it. Reach out, get help. Don't let the stigma that surrounds mental health get to you, right? You are important. You are, you matter. So reach out and talk to somebody about what you're going through, because there are people who care and there are people who can help you.
So I recently went on the 5-kilometer walk for suicide prevention and depression on World Suicide Prevention Day. And then we wrapped up with a small conversation to everyone who was at Independence Square. And Ranveer was with me as well. And this is coming from a guy's perspective. And the one thing he said that that struck me was, we are born into a society where men don't just brush it off, or men don't cry, that it's a sign of weakness. So we just brush it off and we move on with our daily routine, and we don't address our problems. But it's becoming okay to speak about your issues. It's now the cool thing to be able to emotionally share, and the fact that it came from a male also brought smiles to other guys' faces, because they kind of seemed comfortable relating. So I think that in itself is bringing about some sort of change.
I think to the people who are going through this, I think I echo what Audley says, is that you may think there's no one in your corner, but there's someone in your corner. That's the first thing. I mean, even if it's someone you don't know, there are so many of us out there who fight tooth and nail, because, we just really believe that shouldn't be something you deal with. The second thing for me with victims of gender-based violence is that it's never your fault. It doesn't matter how you were dressed. It doesn't matter if you spoke back. It doesn't matter if you slept with 10 people. It doesn't matter if you were drunk. None of that matters. You are never at fault for the violence that you have faced. You should never, it really still strikes me is that every now and again on social media, there'll be this sort of element of, like a thing people do where they say, if there were no men for a day, what could you do? And the answers you hear from women are phenomenal. Like they just want to walk around at night, or like have a drink and get wasted. And to me, that continually blows my mind. So I think, for me, it's just saying that you're never at fault. It's never your fault, even if you got angry, even if you shouted back, even if you, whatever the situation was, nobody has the right to treat you or make you feel less than or ever treat you with violence or harassment in any way. That's never okay. You have never provoked it. And yeah, just you really have to believe that. It doesn't matter what you think you've done. You haven't, the reaction is just not justified ever.
Thanks. And with that, I'm going to wrap the conversation up. Thank you very much to all three power ladies for being on this and for imparting that wisdom. And thank you so much to everybody who has joined on this, whether you're watching it on Facebook Live or whether you're watching it on the Zoom link. The fact that you took the time out to watch, to engage, to learn, makes me hopeful that this is a conversation that doesn't just stop at panelists, that it's something that you will continue to take forward with your friends and family, that you will probably have gleaned some little tiny piece of even basic information that can help you sort of help somebody else out there. And of course, as Ashanti said, all three of these ladies are women who are available to support society in their respective fields. So please do feel free to reach out to them if you ever need their help. And I'm going to wrap this up now because I think we've talked a lot. We can talk. I know all four of us can talk until tomorrow if we were given the chance, but maybe we shouldn't. That will also be like too much. Yeah, so thank you very much to Chocolat for having us and for giving us this opportunity and this platform. Thank you obviously to the British Council for making these music videos possible in order to make the conversations possible. Thank you, Ashanti, for having...
Thank you to Adley and Shania and Parami and Chocolat and Michelle as well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
I guess from
absolute
us,
pleasure.
It's signing out. Parami, can we hand it back to you if you're there?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Personally, I would prefer it if every one of you talked until tomorrow. I was absolutely riveted. And I think my legs are cramping up because I haven't moved an inch since this started. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I think everyone who tuned in through whatever means learned a lot. So thank you to each and every one of you. And thank you, Shanuki, for a fantastic job moderating as always. So on behalf of Chocolat, this is me signing out because I think Shanuki covered pretty much everything that needed to be covered and all the thank yous. So once again, thank you so much for joining us and please keep this conversation going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.